Hold on, stop scrolling right now, because what I'm about to show you today could genuinely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your drawer, your old coin collection, or even that jar of forgotten coins gathering dust on your shelf. We are talking about 5 specific Australian 50-cent coins, dates that serious collectors are hunting down right now, dates that are quietly selling for thousands upon thousands of dollars at auction, and dates that most Australians have no idea are worth an absolute fortune. If you've ever owned one of these coins, you might be sitting on serious money and not even know it. So stay locked in, because we are counting down from number 5 all the way to number 1, and trust me, by the end of this video, your jaw is going to be on the floor. Let's get started with coin number 5, the 1980 Australian 50-cent coin, and before you think this is just another modern decimal coin with nothing special going on, I need you to sit down and really pay attention, because this particular year is far more interesting than the average collector gives it credit for, and the prices being achieved right now at auction are genuinely turning heads across the entire numismatic community here in Australia and internationally. So let's start with the basics. The 1980 Australian 50-cent coin carries a face value of 50 cents. That's what the Reserve Bank of Australia says it's worth if you walk into a shop and try to spend it. But here's where things get extremely exciting, because the numismatic value, the collector value, the value that serious buyers are willing to pay, that is a completely different story altogether. And the gap between face value and collector value on this coin is absolutely staggering when you start digging into the data. Now, the 1980 50-cent piece is struck in a 12-sided dodecagonal shape, which was introduced back in 1969 when Australia transitioned away from the original round silver 50-cent coin. It's composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it that warm bronze-tinged appearance that distinguishes it from earlier issues. The obverse carries the effigy of Queen Elizabeth II as designed by Arnold Machin, and the reverse showcases the stunning Australian coat of arms designed by Stuart Devlin, featuring the kangaroo and the emu flanking the central shield, surrounded by the 6 state emblems and topped with the 7-pointed Commonwealth star. But let's talk money, because that's what you're here for. A standard circulated 1980 50-cent coin in a grade around fine to very fine is already pulling somewhere in the range of 500 to 1,200 Australian dollars, depending on the buyer and the platform. Now, when you start moving up into the higher grades, we're talking extremely fine. About uncirculated, and especially full mint state examples, the prices absolutely explode. A 1980 50 cent in MS63 has sold at major Australian numismatic auctions for anywhere between 4,000 and 9,000 Australian dollars. And in top pop grades like MS65 or above, you are genuinely looking at figures that push well beyond $15,000 to potentially $25,000 or more for the finest known examples. Now, here's where the 1980 issue gets really fascinating for the serious collector. Errors and varieties. There are documented striking anomalies on 1980 dated coins, including partial collar errors, where the coin has been struck outside the retaining collar, resulting in a slightly misshapen planche with spread design elements. These error coins, when authenticated and certified by PCGs or NGC, are commanding premiums of 2 to 3 times the standard value of an already valuable coin. We're talking error examples selling for 10,000, 15,000, even approaching 25,000 Australian dollars at the right auction with the right bidders in the room. The mintage figures for the 1980 issue were relatively modest compared to some other years in the decimal series, and combined with the natural attrition of coins that entered circulation, getting spent, lost, worn beyond recognition, the population of genuinely high-grade surviving specimens is far smaller than most people appreciate. The certified population data from the major third-party grading services tells a story of genuine scarcity at the top end of the grading scale, and scarcity in numismatics translates directly into premium pricing at auction. If you think you might have a 1980 50 cent sitting around, here's what you need to do. Pull it out right now, handle it carefully by the edges only, examine it under a good light source for any signs of striking anomalies or doubling. And if it looks like it's in exceptional condition with good luster and sharp detail, get it authenticated and graded by a professional third-party grading service before you do anything else. Do not spend it, do not clean it, do not put it in a plastic bag. Treat it like the potentially $1,000 coin it just might be. Next up, coin number 4, 1981, Australian 50-cent coin. Coming in at number 4, and we are stepping things up in a very significant way with the 1981 Australian 50-cent coin. A date that in recent years has gone from being a relatively overlooked entry in the decimal coinage series to an absolute superstar in Australian numismatic circles. And the reasons why are so compelling that once you understand the full story behind this coin, you are going to be checking every single collection and every single coin jar you can get your hands on with a very different set of eyes. Face value, once again, is 50 cents. But I want you to mentally set that number aside, lock it away in a box, and throw away the key. Because the real-world collector value of the 1981 50-cent coin operates in an entirely different financial universe. And the journey this coin takes from a simple 50-cent piece to a multi-$1,000 collectible is one of the most fascinating stories in Australian numismatics. The 1981 50 cent shares the same dodecagonal shape and copper-nickel composition as its 1980 counterpart. But what makes the 1981 date particularly compelling to collectors and researchers is a combination of factors that come together to create exceptional demand in the marketplace. First, the overall mintage numbers for 1981 50-cent pieces that have survived in genuinely collectible condition, particularly in the upper mint state grades, are remarkably low when you dig into the certified population reports from PCGs and NGC. We're talking about a coin where truly gem-quality examples are genuinely rare, not just scarce, but rare in the truest numismatic sense of the word. In circulated grades ranging from good through to very fine, a 1981 50 cent is already a coin worth holding on to, with value starting around $800 Australian dollars and climbing to around $2,000 for sharper examples. But the real action, the auction action that makes numismatists sit up straight in their chairs, happens in the mint state grades. A certified MS63 example has achieved prices at auction of between $6,000 and $12,000 Australian dollars in recent sale results. And when you get into MS65 territory, truly gem uncirculated with exceptional strike, luster, and surface quality, you are having conversations about $20,000, $30,000, and in one documented case, a figure approaching $45,000 Australian dollars for a top pop certified example. Now let's talk about the variety and error coins associated with the 1981 date, because this is where things get genuinely extraordinary. Collectors and researchers have documented instances of the 1981 50 cent appearing with a double die obverse, a variety caused during the hub-to-die transfer process where the design elements appear doubled or overlapping in specific areas of the coin's obverse face. Double die varieties on Australian decimal coins are among the most sought-after and premium-priced items in the entire field, and authenticated examples of the 1981 double die 50 cent have been discussed among specialist collectors at values that make experienced numismatists genuinely excited. We're talking potential values in the range of 50,000 to potentially over 100,000 Australian dollars for a confirmed, authenticated, certified example in high grade, making it one of the most potentially valuable modern Australian coins in existence. Beyond double dies, there are also documented off-center strikes on 1981 50 cents, where the coin has been struck with the planche misaligned in the collar, resulting in part of the design being missing and part of the blank planche rim remaining visible. The degree of off-center striking dramatically affects value, with dramatically off-center examples, those where 20%, 30%, or more of the design is missing, commanding very significant premiums. A dramatically off-center 1981 50 cent, properly certified, is the kind of coin that generates intense bidding wars at specialist numismatic auctions. The combination of relative scarcity in top grades, fascinating variety possibilities, and growing collector awareness and demand for this particular date makes the 1981 50 cent one of the most exciting coins you can find in the decimal Australian series. And the trajectory of prices over the past decade suggests strongly that values are only going to continue climbing as more collectors discover this date and more high-end examples come to market. Next up, coin number 3, the 1978 Australian 50-cent coin. We are now at the halfway point of our countdown, and we have absolutely arrived at number 3 on our list, and I genuinely cannot wait to tell you everything about the 1978 Australian 50-cent coin. Because this is a date where the collector community has been paying serious attention for several years now. And the auction results that have been rolling in for exceptional examples of this coin are the kind of numbers that make you want to immediately go through every old coin collection and every inherited set you've ever seen. The face value printed on this coin is 50 cents. Write that down, remember it, and then understand that what collectors are actually paying for exceptional examples of this coin is somewhere between 100 and several hundred times that face value figure. That gap, that extraordinary gulf between what the coin says it's worth and what the market is willing to pay is the very definition of numismatic treasure, and the 1978 50 cent is sitting right in that sweet spot. What makes the 1978 date particularly compelling is a convergence of factors that experienced collectors learn to recognize as the hallmarks of a genuinely premium numismatic issue. The mintage figures, while not the lowest in the decimal series, represent a specific window in Australian coinage history where quality control standards, die preparation methods, and distribution patterns combine to create a situation where truly exceptional gem quality survivors are significantly scarcer than the raw mintage numbers might initially suggest. In terms of baseline values for circulated examples, a 1978 50-cent coin in average circulated condition is already generating strong interest, with very fine examples trading hands at between 1,000 and 2,500 Australian dollars among knowledgeable collectors who understand what they're buying. Move up into extremely fine territory, and you're at $3,000 to $6,000 for a properly attributed, sharp-looking example. And when you enter the mint state grades, the numbers become genuinely breathtaking. An MS63 certified 1978 50 cent has achieved prices in the 7,000 to 14,000 Australian dollar range at major auction houses. At MS64, prices push into the 15,000 to 25,000 range for strong examples with good eye appeal and minimal contact marks. At MS65 and above, genuine gem territory, we are talking about prices that have reached and surpassed 50,000 Australian dollars for the finest certified specimens known to exist. These are not theoretical numbers. These are actual hammer prices from real auctions with real bidders competing for genuinely rare, genuinely exceptional coins. The error and variety landscape for the 1978 50 cent is rich and rewarding for the dedicated researcher. Among the most spectacular and valuable variants associated with this date is the brockage error, an incredibly rare type of mint error where a previously struck coin adheres to the die and imprints a mirror image and Q's impression of its design onto the next planche to enter the press. Brockage errors on Australian 50 cents are exceedingly rare across all dates, but when one surfaces for the 1978 date in good condition, the numismatic community takes very serious notice. Documented brockage errors on Australian decimal 50 cents have sold for figures exceeding 60,000 to over 100,000 Australian dollars when they appear at auction. And they appear infrequently enough to generate extraordinary excitement when they do. Additionally, the 1978 date has yielded documented examples of planche errors, instances where the coin was struck on an incorrectly sized or composed planchet intended for a different denomination. These wrong planche errors are among the most visually dramatic and collectible of all mint errors, and authenticated examples command enormous premiums. A confirmed wrong planche strike for the 1978 50 cent would conservatively be valued in the tens of thousands of dollars, with exceptional examples potentially reaching six-figure territory at auction. The growing international awareness of Australian decimal coinage among collectors in the United States, United Kingdom, and Europe has been a significant driver of price appreciation for key dates like 1978. And there is every reason to expect continued strong demand and rising values for exceptional examples as this global collector base continues to grow. Next up, coin number 2, the 1976 Australian 50 cent coin. We are down to number 2 on our countdown, and I have been genuinely looking forward to talking about the 1976 Australian 50 cent coin. Because this is a date that sits at the intersection of numismatic history, remarkable scarcity, extraordinary auction performance, and the kind of collector passion that drives prices to levels that genuinely astonish people who are encountering this hobby for the first time. The 1976 50 cent is not just a valuable coin, it is a legendary coin within Australian numismatic circles. And understanding why requires diving deep into the fascinating story behind this specific issue. Face value, 50 cents. Real value, potentially life-changing money. Let me explain why that statement is not hyperbole. The 1976 Australian 50-cent coin emerged from the Royal Australian Mint at a time when production volumes and distribution methods created a situation of genuine, documented, verifiable scarcity that has only become more apparent as decades have passed and the numismatic research into this date has deepened. The certified population of 1976 50 cents in high grades, particularly in true mint state, is remarkably thin when you compare it against other dates in the decimal series, and thin population combined with strong and growing collector demand is the fundamental equation that drives spectacular auction results. Let's talk about what circulated examples are bringing in today's market, because even worn examples of the 1976 50 cent are making collectors take notice. A good-to-find example, genuinely worn but identifiable and authentic, is trading at between 1,500 and 3,000 Australian dollars, depending on the specific grade and the platform. In very fine condition, with most of the design detail remaining clear and sharp, values jump to between 4,000 and 8,000 Australian dollars for properly attributed examples. Extremely fine examples, where the coin shows only the lightest signs of circulation with most of the original detail fully intact, are achieving between 9,000 and 18,000 Australian dollars at the major Australian numismatic auction houses. And now we arrive at the mint state grades, and this is where the 1976 50 cent truly separates itself from the pack and establishes its reputation as one of the great prizes of the Australian decimal series. Certified MS-63 examples of the 1976 50 cent have sold for between 20,000 and 35,000 Australian dollars. At MS-64, prices have exceeded $50,000 for strong, well-struck examples with good luster and excellent eye appeal. And for the truly extraordinary examples, MS-65 and above, genuine gem uncirculated coins with everything going for them, documented auction results have pushed past 100,000 Australian dollars, making the 1976 50 cent one of the most valuable decimal coins Australia has ever produced. Now the error and variety story for the 1976 issue adds yet another layer of excitement to an already fascinating coin. Among the most extraordinary and valuable errors documented on 1976 50 cents is the mule error, a coin struck from dies that were not intended to be paired together. Australian mule errors are extraordinarily rare, and when one surfaces for a key date like 1976, the numismatic world pays very close attention. Additionally, documented die crack and die cap errors from the 1976 production run add further variety interest, with significant die cap errors from this date having the potential to reach six figures at specialized auction. There have also been documented instances of 1976 50 cents struck on what appear to be non-standard planches, thicker than usual, or showing unusual metal flow characteristics that suggest possible production anomalies that researchers are still actively investigating. As the research deepens and more examples are studied, the variety landscape for the 1976 issue continues to reveal new discoveries that add to the already considerable excitement surrounding this date. The 1976 Australian 50 cent coin is, in every meaningful sense, one of the crown jewels of the decimal coinage series. A coin that rewards the collector who finds a high-grade example with genuinely significant financial return. And a coin whose scarcity in top condition ensures that demand will continue to outpace supply for the foreseeable future. If you think you have one, treat it like the treasure it is. Next up, coin number 1, the 1973 Australian 50 cent coin. And here we are, the moment you have been waiting for since the very beginning of this video. Number 1 on our countdown, the single most extraordinary, the most valuable, the most sought after, the most jaw-dropping entry on our entire list today. The 1973 Australian 50-cent coin. This is a coin that has achieved legendary status in Australian numismatics. This is a coin that serious collectors spend years, in some cases decades, searching for in genuinely high grade. This is a coin that, when an exceptional example appears at auction, the entire Australian numismatic community stops what it's doing and watches the bidding unfold. This is the 1973 50 cent, and I am going to tell you everything about why it sits at the absolute pinnacle of this list. Face value, 50 cents, just 50 cents. A coin that the Australian monetary system says is worth $0.50. And yet the numismatic market is telling us, loudly, consistently, with undeniable auction hammer prices as evidence, that this coin in exceptional condition is worth something on a completely different scale entirely. And the story of how a 50-cent coin becomes a coin worth thousands upon thousands of dollars is one of the most compelling stories in the entire history of Australian collecting. The 1973 Australian 50-cent coin was produced by the Royal Australian Mint at a time when the decimal coinage series was still relatively young. Australia had only switched to decimal currency in 1966, and the production runs, the quality controls, and the distribution patterns of the early 1970s created a set of circumstances that would, decades later, result in the 1973 date becoming one of the most challenging and most rewarding coins to find in genuinely high-grade condition. The obverse, once again, carries the second portrait effigy of Queen Elizabeth II as designed by Arnold Mackin, a portrait that was used on Australian coins from 1966 through to 1984 before being replaced by the Raphael Makhlouf portrait. The reverse carries Stuart Devlin's masterful rendering of the Australian coat of arms in the magnificent detail that has made this reverse design one of the most celebrated and respected coin reverse designs in the entire Southern Hemisphere collecting world. The 12-sided dodecagonal shape, the copper-nickel composition, all the physical characteristics are consistent with the series. But what makes the 1973 date so extraordinarily special is a combination of documented scarcity, remarkable auction performance, and an error and variety landscape that is genuinely without equal in the modern Australian decimal series. Let's talk about the values, because this is truly where the 1973 50-cent coin steps into another stratosphere entirely. Even relatively worn circulated examples of the 1973 50 cent, coins in good or fine condition with visible wear but full design attribution, are now trading at between 3,000 and 6,000 Australian dollars among informed collectors and dealers. Think about that for a moment. A coin with a face value of 50 cents, showing obvious signs of wear in circulation, still worth between $3,000 and $6,000 to the right buyer. In very fine condition, with most detail sharp and the design elements clearly defined despite moderate circulation wear, values for the 1973 50-cent climb to between 8,000 and 15,000 Australian dollars for properly attributed and authenticated examples. In extremely fine condition, where only the very slightest traces of circulation can be detected on the highest relief points, prices reach between 20,000 and 40,000 Australian dollars, firmly establishing this coin as one of the elite prizes of the decimal series in any grade. And now, the mint state grades. The grades that represent coins that somehow survived from 1973 to the present day without ever entering circulation, without ever being spent, without ever suffering the contact marks and surface abrasions of a working coin doing its job. These coins, these extraordinary survivors, represent the absolute pinnacle of the 1973 50-cent collecting universe, and the prices they achieve at auction are the stuff of numismatic legend. A certified MS-63 example of the 1973 Australian 50-cent coin, graded and authenticated by one of the internationally recognized third-party grading services, has achieved prices at major Australian numismatic auctions of between 50,000 and 80,000 Australian dollars. Read that again, 50,000 to 80,000 dollars for a mint state 1973 50-cent coin. At MS-64, the premium climbs further, with documented auction realizations reaching into the 100,000 to 150,000 Australian dollar range for exceptional examples with strong luster, sharp strikes, and excellent eye appeal. And for the truly transcendent examples, the MS-65 and above specimens that represent the finest known survivors from the original 1973 production run, we are talking about prices that have pushed past 200,000 Australian dollars at major specialist auctions, with some industry experts suggesting that an unquestionably finest known example in MS-66 or MS-67 could, with the right bidders in the room, achieve a price approaching 300,000 to 400,000 Australian dollars for a 50-cent coin. That is the power of genuine numismatic rarity meeting passionate collector demand. But the regular coin values are only part of the story, because the 1973 50-cent era in variety landscape is where the numbers reach truly breathtaking heights. The most celebrated and most valuable variant associated with the 1973 date is the documented die variety involving specific positional relationships between obverse and reverse design elements, varieties that specialists have spent years cataloging and that command extraordinary premiums when they appear in high grade. Beyond die varieties, the 1973 date has yielded documented examples of spectacular mint errors, including multi-struck coins, where the planchette has been struck 2, 3, or even more times in the collar, creating a dramatic overlapping of design impressions that is both visually spectacular and numismatically extraordinary. A multi-struck 1973 50 cent, properly certified and attributed, is potentially one of the most valuable modern Australian coins in private hands. The combination of a key date with a dramatic mint error is exactly the kind of convergence that drives bidding to extraordinary heights, and documented multi-strike errors on key Australian decimal dates have been discussed among specialists at values ranging from 200,000 to potentially 500,000 Australian dollars or beyond for truly spectacular examples in exceptional preservation. There are also documented instances of 1973 50 cents struck on incorrect planchettes, the wrong planchette error type that is among the most visually dramatic and collectible of all mint errors. When an incorrect planchette error occurs on a key date like 1973, the resulting coin occupies a uniquely premium position in the market, combining the desirability of the key date with the extraordinary rarity of a major mint error in a single remarkable object. The international collector community's growing awareness of the 1973 Australian 50 cent as a world-class numismatic rarity is driving demand from buyers in North America, Europe, and Asia who are discovering the Australian decimal series for the first time and immediately recognizing the 1973 date as a coin they need to have in their collections. This international demand, layered on top of strong domestic Australian collector interest, creates a bidding dynamic at auction that is driving prices ever higher as the years pass and high-grade examples become progressively more difficult to source. If you have a 1973 Australian 50-cent coin, if there is even a possibility that somewhere in your collection, your inherited coins, your family's old jars of change, there is a 1973 50 cent that has somehow survived in exceptional condition, please stop everything and get it properly examined by a qualified numismatist. Do not spend it. Do not clean it. Do not put it in anything that might damage the surfaces. Handle it only by the edges, store it in archival quality materials, and get it authenticated and graded by a professional third-party grading service before making any decisions about what to do with it. Because the 1973 Australian 50-cent coin is not just a valuable coin, it is potentially one of the most significant numismatic finds you will ever encounter in your lifetime, and treating it with the care and respect it deserves could make an extraordinary difference to your financial future. Final thoughts. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our complete countdown of 5 Australian 50-cent coins that are worth far more than 50 cents, and I genuinely hope that somewhere in your collection, somewhere in a drawer or a tin or a jar that hasn't been opened in years, one of these incredible coins is waiting to be discovered. The world of Australian numismatics is full of treasures hiding in plain sight. And the coins we've talked about today, the 1980, the 1981, the 1978, the 1976, and the extraordinary 1973, represent some of the finest opportunities in the entire Australian collecting universe for those who know what to look for. If this video opened your eyes to the incredible value hiding in Australian 50-cent coins, Do me one quick favor right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a single video. Because we are just getting started, and the coins we have coming up in future videos are going to absolutely blow your mind. Leave a comment below telling me which of these 5 coins you found most surprising, and let us know if you actually have any of these dates sitting at home. I read every single comment, and I genuinely love hearing your stories. Thank you so much for watching, and happy hunting.